Welcome everybody to CIRF Report for June 10th and 11th, 2019. We have, for the first time in a CIRF Report, a grand cross happening in the astrology. We're going to get into this in detail, and there's some very, to me, some very surprising suggestions from the reading in the I-Ching, and the DreamBot supported the I-Ching. So let's get into this. It is pretty crazy if you look at the sky. And I'm recording this on Sunday evening, getting my highlighter out Sunday evening. And then here in a few hours, in the middle of the night, say between 12:30 and 2 a.m. Eastern time, you're going to see this grand cross. And as the moon progresses into tropical Virgo, it's going to start opposing Neptune. That's the one cross. There's two oppositions in the Grand Cross. That's the one, and then Sun in Gemini making an opposition to Jupiter. That goes exact actually on Monday morning, as we'll see in the next slide. But for now, we're looking at the middle of the night, and well, most people are sleeping, and so I'm wondering if dreams are going to be incorporated in this, especially since the primary factor here is Neptune. And why I say primary is because moon is being the kind of the fastest planetoid here, and it's being formed for a few hours until it starts progressing further. But meanwhile, these planets are much slower, and so this this T-square is going to remain. That energy is going to remain. So I'm calling the Neptune a major factor here, a major influence. And because of all this energy, all these squares, all these four squares, from Jupiter to the moon to sun, etc., all the way around, are approximately 90 degrees compared to each other. Now, it's not exact. So like the sun opposed Jupiter is technically going exact around 10:27 on Monday morning, the 10th, which is well after almost 11 hours after this stuff is happening, after the moon's here. But the energy is there, and the main factor here is Neptune. Without Neptune, you don't have the T-square, you don't have the Grand Cross. So Neptune being about imagination, but very spiritual in nature, very inward, almost confusing in a way as we go off to fantasy land, supported by Neptune being the ruler of Pisces. And it's been in that sign for quite some time now, but now you've got the influences of these squares happening. So what does this feel like? This could feel like a lot of spiritual stagnation, but you may not feel that. You might feel more of like desires for something else, like I wish I was a little bit further in my spiritual progress, or there's maybe just some egotistical wanting, a lot of wanting in this. And I've got some good news and bad news. In this Grand Cross, good news and bad news is that it's mutable, which means that all these four signs are the mutable signs, and which this means is that we're creating an influence or a belief system surrounding your life, and that's going to change. These mutable signs do change, and the underlying beliefs will change. So the good news is that if you're going through this hard times, maybe even if it's just spiritual hard time, it's going to change. And the bad news is if you really like what's happening right now and you like your situation, it's going to change. But the whole point is to be present in the moment. And the I-Ching has some neat little nifty suggestions here in a second. So we're going to get into that later. But let us look at what's happening the same day, but a little bit later on. As the moon progresses, the Grand Cross goes away. And what's left is the T-square. And the T-square is with the opposition. Like I mentioned earlier, at 10:27 a.m. on Monday, the sun makes an opposition to Jupiter, making that exact. And then these two squares to Neptune still apply, making that a T-square. That is still the energy is still very much there. The Neptune is bringing in the spiritual component of this, and this is during the day. If you're not careful, if you're not listening to the CIRF report, most people might be drifting off into fantasy land, wishing they were a lot of wishing I was somewhere else, or maybe even scared. If you're having nightmares or bad thoughts, that's going to be disastrous for the both the dreams and the daydreams, and the daytime Neptune influence is going to be more negative. But a little bit later in the day, you've got Moon that trines Venus, that being extremely important. We talked about I think it's still important to watch the last CIRF report if you want more on this particular component, because Venus is going fresh into tropical Gemini, making coming together a very big part of the influence and intimacy and relationships. And that's very important. And as we saw before, there was a square with the moon, so it kind of made it contentious, but now we've got a harmonious trine. So the whole point of this on Monday is the T-square, so spiritually kind of stagnant, or maybe just feeling that's our perception, but at least their relationships are strong. Okay, remember that part. All right, let's get into Tuesday, we've got a square here with Mercury. The T-square remains. And here I've highlighted the Rave Mandala. So the I-Ching readings it started out with 8, and I thought that was pretty incredible because it's all about Venus. Venus is technically in hexagram number 20, but it still has that influence from the 8, and we'll get into this here in the next slide. But then we had a change line and goes into the 62. So let's get into this, because this gets into our solution, and it's very much based in the astrology. All right. So through the coins for the intention of getting the biggest influence and the solution for 610 and 611. And what I got was some mega changes here. So it came out to an 8, but we had change lines on 3, 4, and 5. So what is 8? 8 is holding together. Holding together brings good fortune. Inquire of the oracle once again, whether you possess sublimity, constancy, and perseverance, then there is no blame. Those who are uncertain gradually join. Whomever comes too late meets with misfortune. All right, I want to, not wasting any time, I want to really get into, basically this is all about relationships, but coming together in a group and holding together and having faith in that group. Now, what's really important here are these change lines. Whenever you have these dots here in the I-Ching reading, these signify change. It's the whole concept of the divination of I-Ching is changes in energy. That's the whole premise behind how we move in life. It's all about these changes that happen. And so whenever these changes come in, it highlights the most important part. So 6, this is the yin in the 3rd place. So that 6 in the 3rd place means you hold together with the wrong person. And so this change line right here is asking you to really evaluate who you're holding with. I mean, let's go back to the trine with Venus. You're going to get a little bit of that too in the relationships. It's all about figuring out whether or not you're even with the right folks. Then we've got 6 in the 4th place. Hold to him outwardly also. Perseverance brings good fortune. What does this mean? This means that to the folks that have relationships and the intimacy that they're looking for, make sure it's not one of these secret relationships. Make sure that it's presented in the outer world as well. If you're feeling a certain way about another person, make sure that it's the type of relationship that is outward and expressive across the public as well. Then finally, we have 9, that's the yang, in the 5th place. Manifestation of holding together. In the hunt, the king uses beaters on 3 sides only and forgoes game that runs off in front. The citizens need no warning. Good fortune. I read that fast because it's kind of a confusing one. And what it means really is that there's kind of the Book of Changes. I encourage you to look at the Book of Changes because I'm not going to read it all. It's just pretty extensive. But they talk about the royal hunting. And we don't want to push people into the group. We only want to let the people who want to join and who feel that are right for the group. But it's not about forcing people to join the group. It's allowing people to enter. Okay, so it's more about allowing than it is figuring out whether, judging people and whether or not they should be in the group or shouldn't be in the group. All right, so I also ask for the solution, and with these changes comes 62, hexagram 62. Preponderance of the small. Preponderance of the small, success. Perseverance furthers. Small things may be done. Great things should not be done. The flying bird brings the message. It is not well to strive upward. It is well to remain below. Great good fortune. So just to elucidate a little bit more this directly from the Book of Changes, in any event, we must not count on great success since the requisite strength is lacking. What it's saying is that the energy right now is all conflicted. The I-Ching is telling us, hey, look at this Grand Cross. It is very confusing energy. And so don't go out and embark on these big projects and expect great return. Just focus on the small things. In fact, we must always fix eyes more closely and more directly on duty than does the ordinary man, even though this might make his behavior seem petty to the outside world. In all his personal expenditures, he is extremely simple and unpretentious. Okay? So even in your expenditures, be humble, be grateful. In other words, just for a few days, the I-Ching is screaming at us to cling to each other, hold together, and just be grateful for what you do have and the small things in life. And don't expect anything more. Now, here's what's crazy. Let's look at what the people are dreaming in the DreamBot. First, we have spiritual, and this whole red meme is all about spiritual powers and spiritual journey. I mean, palm reading and mirror. This was scrying with the mirror. Energy, sight, message, spell, gate, and spiritual. Interestingly, the hexagram 62 had the gate in it with the 9 change line was talking about the hunting, and they had a certain gate with the animal comes in through the gate. It's crazy. But anyway, it's all connected. And in the red arrows is that Neptune influence, the Neptune square, T-square, Grand Cross. It's all there. And the biggest influence from the DreamBot is, or at least it's showing through the dreams right now, is the spiritual journey. All right. And then the second one is the blue arrows. It's really conflicted and stagnant. Well, duh, we've got a Grand Cross coming. It's really unbelievable how this overlaps. False, possible, nap, shred, attack, backwards. These are very stagnant, very conflicted words. All right, and then finally you have in the gold arrows, yellow arrows, normalcy, routine, expected, with words like, well, picture, regular, fact, sun, related, and reason. So everything is just, it is what it is. Some people don't like that saying, but it's routine. It's expected. That's the small things in life. So let's get to the solution. And the solution is, going back to what we normally do in the astrology is to look for getting in a line with the stars. Well, what I didn't mention was in a Grand Cross, you have all of the signs represented. So we have earth, air, water, and fire, all represented in the Grand Cross. And so where do we go with the astrology? We could go with the Neptune influence, but what about these others? So anyway, the I-Ching suggests that we focus on holding together and then preponderance of the small. So what we have here, this is going out to NationalDreamCenter on Facebook and Instagram on Monday morning. Holding together, Grand Cross brings about confusing stagnation, but a bonding that endures. So make sure that you're focusing in, and rewind to the I-Ching reading on hexagram 8, because those change lines were very important to describe what parts of the relationship are important. Letting people come into the group instead of forcing them to come into the group. And then making sure you're not with the wrong people, and then making sure that the relationships you have are worthy of displaying publicly. Okay, that's what we need to be focusing on there. And then taking this further with hexagram 62. So surrender desires for lofty achievement. Value the small things in life. Gratitude and humbleness come into play, and even in your finances. Reducing your expenditures, reduce your expectations of life itself, reducing the big projects. And we don't know what that influence is going to look like come Wednesday. So we really need to see what the Dreambot is saying and the stars. So this has to do just with, really Sunday night, Monday, and Tuesday up to the 11th of June. And then from then on, we'll have to re-engage on Tuesday night and see where the collective is on the influence. All right. I hope this was, that's intervention. This slide here, that goes to intervention on Facebook and Instagram. If you're interested in getting these every day as little reminders of the CIRF report, then go to intervention and subscribe. All right. That's a little bit longer, but you've got a lot of crazy energy out there, and it's fairly simple. Hold together and appreciate the small things. That's it. It's that simple. Okay. Easier said than done, though. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good couple days. We'll see you on Tuesday.